Hi everyone, and welcome back to another TFT Masterclass. With the new set coming, there is going to be new set mechanics, new set units, new traits. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today to make sure that you know exactly what's going on for when the new set drops. So a couple things we're going to talk about today. We're going to start off with the set mechanics and the changes. So this includes the new set mechanic power-up. We're going to talk about the changes to the champion roles, along with the rework to important items. After a little intro of this into the set, we're going to move more into the unit trait explanation, where we will explain all of the origins and explain all of the classes. Within this section, we'll also show some comps, so you know exactly what to play on PBE and get used to the units, get used to the compositions, augments, etc. At the very end, I'll do a little recap, and then you can ask any questions in the Discord, in the comment section, etc., and I'll be happy to help you out. Okay, so let's start off with the new set mechanic, which is essentially called Power Snacks. What is going to happen is you will be given 2 consumable Power Snacks throughout the game, where your first one comes on stage 1-3, neutral round, and the last one and second one comes on stage 3-6. So what is this? This is pretty similar to anomalies, where essentially after you feed one of these consumables to one of your units, you'll get one of 3 selections of upgradable abilities, and these abilities will either power up your individual champion, like for a actual stat or like a scaling of some kind, or give supportive buffs. There is a wide variety of a pool abilities that you could select from. Now, how do you remove them? There are 2 ways you can remove them. You also will be gaining 1 power snack remover per stage, so at the very start of every stage, so every -1, or you could just sell the unit that has the current power snack upgrade. Since we have 2 power snacks, ideally you're going to be wanting to put them on your 2 strongest unit, and most of the time this will be 1 frontline unit, so your main tank, and then 1 backline unit, your main carry. Let's keep going. So they made some changes to the champion roles. So essentially now there are going to be 5 classification of champion roles: fighter, marksman, assassin, caster, and tanks. You don't have to worry too much about the attack and magic. They function both the same. The reason why they put these roles is now this will determine how a unit will generate mana, along with some new targeting rules. So for example, assassins or fighters, they can now be usually front rowed. Usually in the past you'd put them second row, so then they would be not taking aggro first, but now with the changes to the targeting, as you see here, tanks are more likely to be targeted, so this is kind of similar to like a taunt, while assassins are less likely to be targeted. So here, for example, you could now put assassins and fighters in the front row, along with some mana changes. So attack fighters, now basically any class that is not a tank cannot gain mana from taking damage. So magic casters gain mana from auto-attacking, so only 7 instead of 10. They also gain 2 mana per second. Assassins gain 10 mana per attack, same with marksmen, same with fighters, but they will not gain mana from being hit. The very last thing is now mana per second is a new stat in the game. You could get this not only from being a magic caster, you could also get this from items such as blue buff. So let's move on to the item reworks. Here are the 3 main ones that I think are the most important one. There's also a couple other reworks. So Adaptive Helm is going to be the first one. Gives you 20 magic resist and 22 mana per second. An additional effect for this item is you'll now also gain an additional 50% mana from all sources. So this is going to be really good in compositions where you are going to be generating mana, for example, like Prodigy. Additionally, the wearer will gain a bonus effect, and this is now based on their role instead of their positioning. So if you remember, it used to be like frontline Adaptive Helm gains resistances and mana on being attacked, and then backline is offensive. Now it's tanks and fighters gain resistances, and then every other role will gain 15 AD and 15 AP regardless of positioning on the board. So that's pretty interesting. Moving on to the second one now, blue buff. So instead of gaining that 10 mana after a cast, now it is just going to be giving you 15 AD, 15 AP, and 5 mana per second. And then our very last one, Titan's Resolve. So you'll now get 20 armor, 10 attack speed. Same thing, you will eventually get 50, 80, and 50 AP from stack up to 25 times. However, now at full stacks, you'll be getting 15 resistances instead of 25. So that's us minus 10. However, you will now gain immunity to crowd control. And this is extremely important for units such as like fighters or assassins, because as you saw on the previous slide, these units will no longer be gaining mana from being hit, which means they're only generating mana from attacking. So if they're CC'd, then that means they're not attacking, which means they're not generating mana. So this is going to be extremely important for melee fighters or melee assassins. Okay, so let's get into the traits now. Let's start off with Origin. So Battle Academia is going to be one of the new traits of the set, pretty similar to set 14's Amp, where essentially as you go up the ladder, it will just be upgrading the abilities of these units. So what does this mean? It means this trait does not grant any HP, AD, AP resistances, or DR, so you definitely want to get these from filler traits such as like Bastion and Augments. And the way to play this right now normally is just going to be a level 8 board. You're playing vertical 7 Battle Academia with Leona being your main tank and Yuumi being your AP backline carry. To make a Battle Academia spat, it will be spat plus tier, and this way you can drop the Katarina and play another Prodigy. Crystal Gambit is going to be similar to previous sets Heartsteel. So if you remember how that works, essentially it's going to be like kind of a multiples of 4 for combats. So after your 4th combat, going into like your 5th round, you'll get an offer to either double down or open your chest. And if you open a chest, you immediately cash out however many gem power you have. Or if you double down, now as you can see from here, you'll gain 100% more gem power, but if you accidentally win, you lose 50% of your gem power and cash out immediately. So double down, as the name suggests, after you take this, you really need to sack, and this way you'll get a lot more gem power. So what does this mean? You should actually win the first 4 rounds rather than sack, save that HP, and then after you hit that doubling down, then you can use your HP as a resource and start farming that gem power. There's a couple ways to play this trait. You can either transition out of Crystal Gambit late game, go into a really strong meta composition with bonus items, etc., or you can play 7 if you have an emblem and play something like this. Luchador, not quite sure how to say this, is going to be a physical damage AD plus percentage HP heal plus cleanse negative effect plus CC trait. So it's actually quite good. It has 4 units here, the Braum being the 5-piece, Dr. Mundo, Volibear, and Nar as well. So since there is a 5 cost unit onto this trait, it's pretty difficult to hit the 4 breakpoint unless of course you make a spat with the spat and glove. You want the 4-piece if you are playing around the Volibear carry. So this is pretty composition, 6 Edgelord, 4 Luchador. And then if you're not playing the 4-piece, you can still play 2 Luchador with the Braum +1 for brief CC. Mentor, so this is a reprint of previous set's emissary trait. There's a couple of these, there's Ninja, there's Ace, where essentially you should only be playing either 1 or 4 of these mentors in order to actually activate the trait. And then once you have 4 mentor activated, they get a bonus effect. So this means that 1 mentor can be splashed into any composition because this is a team-wide buff where Kobukoho gives DR, Udyr is AD AP, Yasuo is AS, and Rise is mana on attack. Or you can actually carry the mentors if you have 4 activated. So here is a pretty meta composition, 5 Mighty Mech and 4 Mentor. This way you can actually carry on the Rise. He'll benefit from all of these plus an effect, a special like healing effect towards his team because you have 4 Mentor activated. Let's keep it going. Mighty Mech. So this is going to be the summons trait of the set. It goes 3, 5, and 7 as your trait breakpoints, and the Mighty Mech, so the actual like Golem summon, scales with star level. So this means that you definitely still want to upgrade your lower cost units like your Lucian, your Aatrox, and your Gangplank. Now this mech actually deals a lot of damage instead of being purely a tank. So I would recommend positioning on the edges as he will do a lot of damage. You can put your other backline damage on the same side and actually try to make your way to the backline carry with a wrap. One thing to note is there is no Mighty Mech emblem. no craftable emblems. So if you do want to get 7 Mighty Mech, you do have to find a Yone, which is not guaranteed, and since he is going to be a 5 cost. So it is pretty recommended to take some Econ Augment, try to go level 9 to have a higher chance of seeing those 5 costs, get that Yone online, and get the 7 Mighty Mech activated. Soul Fighter. So this trait gives HP, attack damage, and AP. It also gives you a little bit of true damage, and all these stats will increase over an 8-second period. So pretty interesting trait here. This means you really want to be pairing the frontline and backline, the frontline with durability and the backline with damage amp, as you essentially have everything else. You will usually be playing 8 Soul Fighter, but since there is a 5 cost, you'll most likely just be playing 6 Soul Fighter unless you high roll the Gwen, which is perfectly fine. This makes augments such as like Climb the Ladder really good. Lineup is pretty good since you have so many frontline units, and you have multiple carries in this composition with the Gwen and the Smear, so it's perfectly okay to have some bonus items. You can make a Soul Fighter spat with the spat and the sword. This way you can drop the Clusta and play a better unit, and yeah, this is perfectly fine. Alright, let's keep going. Star Guardian. So this is pretty similar to previous sets Heavenly/Guild. However, this is a selfish trait, which means that these bonuses from all of the Star Guardians only apply to other Star Guardians. So this means that if you're playing this composition, you're going to be going vertical up into Star Guardian. Now, your main carry is going to be Jinx, and your secondary, or your tank, is going to be Poppy, with your secondary carry being Seraphine. Seraphine, you should not be actually trying to itemize for, since you're not guaranteed to find her, since she is a 5 cost. So usually you're going to be playing around the Jinx, and there's 2 Jinx builds. You can either go for like the attack speed, Rage Blade, Kraken, IE, or you can go for more the caster, which is Shojin, Guardbreaker, IE. Both of these are fine. I think this is a rather bursty composition with the Seraphine and the Jinxes, so I would prioritize Shred instead of Anti-Heal, and then also Climb the Ladder, bonus items, and Star Guardian Crown is going to be pretty good, and Star Guardian Crown will give you a Steadfast Heart. To make a Star Guardian emblem, all you need is a spat and a rod, and now you'll be activating the increased bonuses by 12%, which is pretty good. Okay, so let's keep going. Supreme Cells. This is going to be a new one. This is a fully offensive trait that gives DA and Execute. Also, once you get 4 Supreme Cells activated, well, that's 4 piece or 4 cost unit Akali, you will also gain a second Supreme. And it is only the Supremes that executes. A couple of ways to play this right now. You can either reroll the Darius or the Kaisa, or you can just play around the Akali. And to make this spat, you just need a spat plus a bow. So here's a composition that you can play around, the Heavyweights and the Supreme, to put Darius on the outside, on the weak side of the enemy's board, and just watch him one-shot every unit, and try to take augments such as these. Alright, the Crew. I actually love playing the Crew. I think this is a pretty unique trait. This is a reroll composition. Now, as you can see here, it is a little bit confusing from the way this scales, so I'll break it down for you. This trait scales 2 ways. It scales off of the number of 3 stars on your board, or the number of 3-star crew members, and it scales off of the number of crew members on your board. So as you can see here, you only actually need 2 crew activated to activate the trait. However, the scaling comes from the number of 3 stars, and also the more crew members you have, the more HP and attack speed your crew champions will get. So let's take a look at the scaling breakpoints here. So number 1 is you'll now gain 1 XP per reroll, so that's pretty good. The second one is essentially a free trade sector. So this is the main one that you want to be going for, which means that as early as possible in the game, you want to be getting to 2 3-star crew units, which is usually going to be your Malphite and your Sivir. And then after that is essentially just damage. So this is the board you're going to be playing, just vertical crew with Sivir, Ziggs being your main backline carry, Malphite and Shen being your main tanks, and then just playing Strategist to buff up your frontline tankiness and your backline damage. Okay, I think Wraith is our final origin. I'm not too big of a fan of this trait just because right now I don't think it's that good, but it's pretty similar to previous sets Slayer, where essentially the Wraith units and this thing called the Shadow Realm, which will spawn when you activate Wraith, will heal the lowest health Wraith unit. So pretty interesting. The only one that you could really play right now is 6 Wraith with Kale reroll, and you want to get to level 9 ASAP because she spikes on level 1, 6, and 9. And to make a Wraith +1, all you need is a Spat and a Chain. Okay, so let's move on to the classes now. Bastion. If you played set 14, you'll know what Bastion does. It's just resistances, so make sure that you pair this with HP and durability. Here is a board that you can play with 4 Bastion, 5 Sniper, 4 Bastion, extremely strong right now, where your main tank is Leona, and your backline damage is your Jinx, and eventually your Varus. To make a Bastion emblem, it will just be a pan and a chain. Let's move on to Duelist now. So Duelist is a reprint of previous set's Duelist, and I would say that this composition is a keeper's check. The reason why is this composition is now where your main carries is your front line. So since you don't have your traditional front to back with your front line tank and your back line range DPS, you need some sort of pseudo front line where your main carries actually become the front line, which is keepers. So this is why I think keepers is going to be like the main check for playing Duelist. This also is because you need a little bit of time to allow your Duelist to stack up to 12 times, just more attack speed, and then from here they'll deal more damage, heal themselves, etc. You can play Kale until you have Lee Sin, but once you have Lee Sin, make sure you put him in and then activate him on Duelist stance. And to get a Duelist emblem, it will just be a pan and a bow. Okay, Edgelord, kind of similar to Duelist, where it is like melee 80 carries, like attack damage carries, but I would say the main difference is you don't necessarily need keepers. Like keepers is still good, but it's not mandatory compared to Duelist because you kind of have some other frontline. This is, however, still a fully physical damage composition, so you either need like an Even Shroud on your frontline or a Last Whisper on your backline. To make an emblem, it will just be the Spat and the Sword, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, Executioner. This is a worse reprint of previous sets Executioner. The reason why is in previous sets, Executioner, also Ambusher, used to get damage reduction on the 5-piece, but you don't get it right now. I'm sure they'll add it in the future, or at least buff these numbers. So until then, I would not recommend playing this. Executioner, this is basically a built-in Infinity Edge or Jewel Gauntlet onto your unit. So this means you want to be pairing Executioner units with items such as like Hodge, Striker Flails, essentially other crit glove items, except for IE or Jewel Gauntlets. And to get a +1, it will just be a pan plus your glove. One thing to note is Lee Sin has an Executioner stance as well, so his 3 stances are going to be Juggernaut, Duelist, and then also Executioner. So depending on your comp, you could alter the stance and get a +1 in one of these 3 traits. Okay, Heavyweight. This is pretty similar to previous sets Bruiser, except now you get bonus 80 as a percentage from your HP. So this is pretty good. Means that your quote-unquote bruisers, now your new heavyweights will actually deal a little bit of damage as well. And the most popular comp right now is just the 6 heavyweight for Supreme Cell Darius reroll that I talked about earlier. And to make a heavyweight +1, it will just be a pan plus a belt. All right, Juggernaut. So if you played the Watchers set, where essentially you just get durability up of 50% HP and a little bit less once you go below, that is essentially kind of the same thing. So since you have a lot of durability already, you want to be pairing Juggernaut units with resistances plus HP. So for example, here in our vertical Juggernaut composition, 6 Juggernaut, and we have a scaling backline here, double scaling backline. On your Juggernaut unit, you want to be getting resistances, HP, and then resistances as well. All right, let's keep going. Prodigy. So this is similar to previous sets Dynamo, and this is essentially the mana regeneration trait here, where it is still technically a team-wide trait where your team will gain mana regeneration. However, your prodigies will just gain more. The other thing to note is once you activate 5 Prodigy, now the Prodigies will have a Gunblade effect as well, so this is extremely good, and also pairs really well with the new Adaptive Helm. As the new Adaptive Helm, you'll be gaining mana, like 50% bonus mana from all sources. So that's going to be quite good to make an emblem. It'll just be a pan and a tier, and this is going to be quite good in the vertical Battle Academia Prodigy board, where your main carry is a Prodigy and is your Yuumi in the backline. Okay, Protector. This is pretty similar to previous sets Guardian, which is quite a long time ago, but if you know, you know. Essentially, all units on your board, so this does not necessarily mean protectors, will gain 5% durability once they're shielded, once per combat at 50% HP, and they will now shield themselves and the closest ally for a percent of their max health, which means that you really want to be pairing protector units with HP primarily, but any resistances plus additional shielding is going to be good as well. So here is a composition that you can play, 6 Protector. Once again, an insane frontline. You have double scaling backline. This should actually be an Archangel, but technically Rabadon's is fine as well. Archangel is still better. And on your Protector, any HP is going to be ideal. Okay, Sniper, reprint of previous set Sniper, so you kind of get the gist of what's going on here. Nothing is new under the sun, and by thinking about previous sets and how they could be applicable into current sets, I think it'll be a little bit easier to understand the way the trait web works in the current set, or in the new set. So previous set Sniper, this is essentially just be damage amp increased as the target is further away. So since your backline damage already has so much damage amp, you want to be pairing other stats such as attack speed, attack damage, crit. Ideally, you don't want to be building additional damage amp just such as like Giant Slayer, because you already have so much damage amp from this actual trait. So I can see here, like, this composition extremely good in the current meta right now. Probably will get nerfed after the weekend, but if you can get to 5 Sniper, it is an insane amount of damage amp, and here all you just need is an ability to cast, some attack damage, and some crit. Alright, one of the last ones here, Sorcerer, reprint of previous sets Sorcerer. Okay, so this is essentially just AP, but also after an enemy dies, they will deal a percentage of that enemy's max HP to a nearby enemy. You already have so much AP, repair this with crit, damage, amp, and mana. Here's a fun comp you could play. I don't think it's that good right now. However, you can play 6 Sorcerer, where you're essentially rerolling the Swain and the Ahri, and you cap out as well with the Gwen. Okay, and our last one of the day is going to be Strategist. So pretty similar to previous sets Strategist, but now instead of damage reduction, it's just going to be a flat shield. So all this means is your tanks must be in the front 2 rows and your carries must be in the back 2 rows in order to make use of that frontline shield and that backline damage amp. The way to make the emblem is actually just a spatula and a cloak, and then you're good to go. So here is a composition that you can play, essentially the crew one, where you can just go up in Strategist, have a ton of damage amp on your backline, and a lot of shielding on your front line. Okay, and that's everything for today. So I'll do a quick recap, mainly of the set mechanics, and then I'll end the video here. So there are 3 main things that you need to know going into set 15. The first one is the power snack mechanic, where essentially you will be given 2 consumable power snacks, one on stage 1-3 and one on stage 3-6. Pretty similar to anomalies. You put this on your strongest champion and you power them up. If you want to remove it, you'll be given 1 power snack remover at the start of every stage, so every -1, or you can get your snack back by selling the unit that is currently upgraded. It should be used on your 2 strongest unit, usually 1 in the front line, your main tank, and 1 in the back line, your main carry. The champion roles, there are 5 roles now, 5 classifications, and just changes a little bit of how mana is generated, but also the more important one, in my opinion, or equally as important, is the targeting. So now for your assassins and your fighters, you can frontline them as long as they're next to a tank, and the tank will taunt and make sure that your assassin and fighter does not get hit first. And the very last one, there are a couple changes to the item reworks. Of course, we'll figure this out more as stats come out, but just intuitively, like, Titan's Resolve is going to be a lot stronger now just because of how important crowd control immunity is on fighters and assassins that only gain mana from actually auto-attacking instead of just being hit. So that's been everything for today. I hope you learned something from the Ultimate Set 15 guide. More guides will be coming out. Best luck in PBE, and I will see you soon on the stream. Have a great day and take care.